Hey, welcome back to Cody Builds, guys. If you missed last week's episode, we finally got the truck bed cut down and we started taking our first steps towards getting it reassembled. On this week's episode, we're going to continue down that path and we're going to work on getting some of the things that are rusted, patched up, and we're going to just start making our progress towards getting this bed put back together and officially making it a short bed. So stick around and let's get to work. Got the corner patched in. This looks pretty nice. I'm pretty happy with that. Who would have known that welding on all those rusty derby cars would finally pay off? I was able to get this patch welded into this rusty floor with fairly little issue. I didn't even have any blow-throughs, maybe one small one in the corner there, but yeah, I just made sure to clean up the rust really good as best I could. The most important thing when you're trying to weld anything is having a clean, a well-prepared surface. So I did sand that until I got good clean metal. There's going to be pits in there. You can't get to all the rust, but you got to get as much of it out of there as you can when you're trying to weld back to it. So that worked out pretty well. So now we're going to go ahead and make up these flanges that are going to come down and turn the corner here. So I'm going to get some poster board out and we're going to stencil one out for each side, and then we'll get that cut out of the metal here and we'll get those tacked in. Okay, if you had a compass, which I do, just not here, you can actually scribe this interior line out. I'm going to try and do this, see how well I can do this with my thumb working as the gauge here. So let's see how well we can do this. I only need to be close because we can... Yeah, I got a little wide there. Okay, I think that's going to work close enough for what I need to do. So I'm going to try and cut this out. I don't have a pair of scissors here either, which would make this a lot easier. So I got my little stencil cut out here, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take my end panel here and I'm just going to hang it up, and it's not going to be quite where it needs to be. It's going to be hanging a little high. That's okay. And you can see in here where this flange was previously welded, and it comes all the way down to the end of this. So if I hold this up where it needs to be in here, yeah, we come right to the edge of that, which is perfect. That's right where we want to be. Let's show you on the back side there. So we'll cut this piece out now. We'll stencil this onto our metal, and we will cut one of these out. And actually, I'm actually going to bring this over here and see how close this is. Okay, this is actually pretty darn close for this one as well. I need actually less even, but the curve is spot on. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut 2 of these out, and then we can modify that one just a little bit for that other side. So I'll get these traced out, we'll get them cut out, and then we'll get them tacked in. What the passenger side ended up looking like. I got the flange in there. You can see from the outside. Got our flange cut in or welded in. I got it smoothed out on the outside. We'll have to do all the grinding on the inside, but I'm not too worried about that at the moment. So I got the patch fully welded in. I got this flange fully welded in. We'll have to come back and weld this weekend, but for now I'm just trying to get everything put together. So the driver's side here is pretty much ready to go, with the exception of our filler panels. Obviously, still need to patch those. So now I'm going to turn my attention back onto the passenger side here, and I'm going to make up another one of those flanges. I'm actually using the plasma cutter for this. This is a dirt cheap, I think this was I think it was $175 or $200 off of Amazon. I bought a while back. I've got an undersized compressor. I'm running it on 110 right now. This is the Best Arc BTC 500P. I got a screaming deal on this thing. I think like I said, I think it was under 200 bucks when I bought it on sale off of Amazon. I tried cutting some thicker stuff with it earlier when we were working on the chassis, and for the size of compressor I have and running it on 110, it just really wasn't cutting it. It wasn't cutting it. That's a good one. But it actually works really well for this sheet metal. Now, I'm not very good at freehanding this, but I'm gonna do the next piece here. I'm gonna freehand it. I'll show you guys what that looks like with the plasma cutter. And then I'll clean it up really good with the welder. That's what I had to do. With the last one, I left my margins a little bit wide. That way it gave me some area to come in and grind and shape that thing the way it needed to be shaped. So I'm gonna set that up now. We'll get the plasma cutter set up, and we'll get this piece cut out, ground into shape, tacked in, and welded up. What I tried to do was leave a little bit of the marker line while I was cutting, and then grind down to that marker line. So just gives you a little extra room to play. Now we're just gonna fit this in. I'm gonna figure out where I need to grind a little extra. I did leave myself a little extra on this one because the template wasn't exactly perfect. So I went a little bit long. This is gonna be perfect. I'm just gonna need to trim it down here at the bottom. You can see down here at the bottom, it's a little bit long. All right, that's gonna do it for tonight. So let's get a little review here on everything we got done. So we got our flange welded in here. This turned out really nice. I'm really happy with the way this looks. Got a little bit of weld we'll have to clean up on the inside. And again, we'll have to grind all of our welds on this side. And then we got our patch piece in here, as well as our flange in on this side. We'll have to do the welding on that on Saturday. So yeah, as far as the back, the side panels, aside from where I have to cut out for our bed caps, the back of the bed is actually, well, I take that back. We still have to put in our lower cross member. So that'll be on our list for first thing on Saturday morning. We'll start fabbing that up and get that welded back in. That shouldn't take too long because we're just going to be spot welding that in. So the last thing I kind of wanted to talk about tonight is, you know, tonight I've been using the welder, and we've been welding on this truck bed that still has undercoating on the bottom side of it. And that undercoating is very flammable. I also was using the plasma cutter. It throws sparks around the garage. One kind of safety thing I like to do, and I think you should start putting it into your routine, is what I call fire watch. I wait a minimum of 30 minutes after I shut down all the welders, all the cutting tools, the plasma cutter, the torch, a minimum 30 minutes after I shut those off before I leave the shop. So that's my dad kind of beat that into my head when I was working on my derby cars, and really, you know, that's just to keep any sparks that tumble underneath your workbench, hit a piece of paper, something like that, catch that on fire. It's really just a safety measure, because the last thing I want for you or for myself or for anyone would be to lose your shop, lose your project, lose all your tools in a fire. So, you know, it's just a little thing. What I usually like to do is I like to shut the welders down, shut everything off, and then I spend 30 to 45 minutes just picking up tools, clean the shop, pick up tools. It helps you stay organized. It keeps your shop safe. And especially in this case where I'm running this garage, we don't want any accidents. So I'm going to just go ahead and get cleaned up for tonight, and then we'll be back out here on Saturday. It's a new day. We're back on the short bed conversion, and I've already started here with this back cross member. We're going to get this cross member set up so that we can get it put back in. And I want to show you guys the difference between the very rearmost cross member on the long bed and the next cross member up. So I went ahead and I cut the extra floor off of the back cross member. This is the furthest back cross member. So the key difference here is in just on these ends. So if we're looking at, I'm going to line these two up so that they're the same, show you they're the same body length here. So these are the same length as far as the channel goes. But this backmost cross member has this little extra side piece here, and that is for spot welding to those filler panels in the back. Originally I was just going to cut this and re-weld it onto the old cross member, but because these are so rusty and I've already drilled into them, I think I'm just going to use my sheet metal and go ahead and break a new piece. I'll cut it to shape, and then I'll break a new piece to weld in on each side. That way we've got fresh metal welded in on each of those. And then there's this piece here, this flange right here, that welds to the header panel. That is different. We'll have to cut a strip of metal back here and weld that in onto this flange right here. So we'll go ahead and get that cut out. And then lastly, if you look inside of this, you can see how rotted this one is. There is a support system in here for where the bed mounts up to the frame. So there's a pipe pass through here and some internal bracing, not anything crazy there. So we'll go ahead and we'll make up something for that as well. And that's just to keep that cross member from compressing when you bolt the thing down. This little tube's going to provide support so that the tension is on, you know, the top of this bed and the bottom of the bed, and the actual sleeve takes the compressive forces and not just the sheet metal, because the bed floor, the braces, they're all basically just the thickness of the sheet metal. They're nothing, you know, they're not super structural. So we'll make up those sleeves and we'll put a few, we'll weld those in as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started. I'm going to first, I'll probably first cut up the big flange, the long flange. So I'll get our table set up with the sheet metal on it. We will measure this one up, we'll measure the length, and we'll go ahead and get one of those cut up. And then I will make my end caps, and then lastly we'll make the internal sleeves. All right, I got my strip cut out here. It's a 1 inch wide by, I believe it was 61 inches long. And I just kind of got it tacked into place at the moment. I'm not entirely sure on the angle. I've got my panel over here, but it's really gonna depend on how this panel ends up sitting, how square it ends up sitting in the bed, what this angle should be set at for this flange. So I think I'm just gonna go ahead and weld it up, and then if I need to bend it, slightly adjust it, we can do that when it's on the truck. We kind of bend the panels together, get them to match, and then tack weld it up. I did go ahead, you saw I wire wheeled the whole cross member down. We're gonna actually repaint this whole cross member once we get it all welded up and back together. Before I go do all the welding on this flange, I'm next up gonna make my templates for the end caps that we've got to put on, and then I'll have to go get some pipe that we can use to sleeve where the bed mounts go, and I've got some leftover 3/16 from patching the frame, so we'll throw that on the inside here. We'll get that all welded in. We'll make a little bracket for that. But yeah, this is coming together pretty well. I'm actually really happy with the way this looks. It's also going to be hidden behind the cab, so you know, we don't have to go too crazy with it, but I was worried that, you know, this is going to look real pieced together or whatever, but I actually think it's going to turn out pretty nice. So definitely needed to use this cross member compared to the other one. I mean, you can see it's actually pretty darn clean. There's a couple, you know, rust spots in there, but for the most part, the original coating is still on it. Towards the end here, you can see where some moisture got into the cross member. For having that bird's nest in here, packed in here, I'm shocked that that wasn't rusted out. The other thing you can notice is like this side had pretty much all of the original coating missing off of it. This would have been the side facing the front of the truck, so it's catching all the road debris and everything. And that's why that side is all pretty well worn, while this side maintained a good amount of the coating still. And the reason you see rust here and here, that's where the frame rails ride. So as moisture comes down the back of the frame rails as you're driving, it would have wicked out between the bed and the frame rails and worked its way up the side. You can actually see where the frame rails are sitting, here and here, here and here. So but it's actually not bad. It's just surface rust. Like I said, we're going to repaint this. We're going to use the Rust-Oleum rust reformer paint on all this. So I'm going to go ahead and make my end caps, and then we'll move on to making the mounts, the bed mount sleeves. Where I'm at with these, I've got the base plate welded to the tube, just tacked to the tube for the time being. And if you look, I've set this up so that the carriage bolt will actually fit all the way through. Not really necessary, but it gives you a little bit of movement on the bottom side. On the top side, I don't want that. You use carriage bolts to bolt the bed down, and they've got a square shaft in them. And that's how you keep from having a hex head on these bolts. It makes a nice smooth surface on the top of the bed. So what I've done is I've drilled out the shaft size of the bolt up to where the square shaft is on the carriage bolt. So you see it won't actually pass through. And what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna mark out square indentate corners into this hole that I've drilled. And we're just gonna use a little Dremel tool, and we're gonna grind out these corners so that this carriage bolt will sit down inside of this. And then we're not relying on just the sheet metal of the bed to hold this carriage bolt in place when we go to try and tighten it. Because what will happen is this corner will end up cutting that sheet metal, rounding this bolt off, and then we've got no way to tighten the carriage bolt. So this will sit directly under the sheet metal so that when this carriage bolt slides in, it'll actually slot into this top plate. It'll hold it in place, and then we'll be able to tighten the bed up. So I'm gonna go ahead and mark these out and get these drilled out. Okay, you can see I got the kind of corners ground out of this, and now this carriage bolt sits in there, and that's a nice thick piece of metal to catch the square shaft of that carriage bolt, so that's going to be perfect. Next up, I'm going to get these put into our crossmember here and kind of get them trued up where I want them so that I can tack them and then fully weld them up. And then once I've got these welded up, we're gonna grab the other cross member over there, put it up on the bench here, and get the holes marked where we need to drill through the cross member and get these braces centered up. And then we'll get them tacked in to the cross member in their correct locations, and we'll get them tacked in at the top and bottom. And then we should be good to go. Then I can finish weld up everything else, and this cross member will be ready to go back into the truck. Okay, you can see just what an improvement this other crossmember is going to be over the old one. I did notice one additional difference between these crossmembers. You'll notice this jogs up. There's a cut in the flange up here, and the same thing, this piece jogs up. And what that is it's not going to affect anything that we're doing, because you'll notice here on the inside fenders, we're into the area of the bed floor where we've got the troughs of the bed floor. Further up, what we cut out was flat, so it's actually raised. It's actually at the height of this, and that's what that little rise is accounting for. It's accounting for that the divots in the bed in this area. When the full bed is in there, that's not there. It's actually flat at the very back. So I don't know if that makes any sense, but basically it's not going to matter for this cross member, because where we cut, we do have the ridges in the bed. So that'll come up tight to the bottom of the flange, just like the rest of the bed will. The one thing we will have to do is we're going to have to cut this seam out where the cross member is to rejoin this tight to the floor, the cross member tight to the floor. So you can see my extensions I put on here. I've got the flange put on there. Probably could have taken my time a little bit more with welding that, but I just kind of buzzed it in. Got a little bit of warping on it. I'm not overly concerned. You're not going to see it, for one. And two, we've got some flexibility with the panels where we can move this thing around as we need to make it work. So the last thing that we need to do here is to mark where the holes are for the attachment of the bed to the frame. So what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to flip this over, flip our new crossmember over here on the table, and then I'm going to take our old crossmember, make a giant mess of rust and dirt everywhere. Okay, we're gonna line these up. Okay, look, we got matching holes here in the bed that we can work off of. So that should be centered there. So I'm gonna take a pen. This is the original sleeve where the bolt would go. So I'm just gonna mark that out really good. I'm gonna come back here and do the same thing on this one. So mark this out as best we can. I think we can be done with this crossmember for good. Set it off to the side. Oops. Okay, now when I flip this back over, or actually no, right here, you can see my marks here, here, and here. Once I have these drilled out, I'm gonna wipe this thing down really good. I'm gonna spray it with the rust reformer paint, and on the outside, and then on the inside, we will figure out where these need to drop in. We'll drop those in. We'll get them welded in on the bottom and tacked into the top here in both locations. And then this thing will be ready to go back in the truck. Goodness gracious, look at this. Filthy. Now you know I wasn't looking forward to that. I got it wire wheeled up. I'm a little nervous. As I was hitting it with the wire wheel, I was knocking holes into the bed here. It's so thin right back in this corner where this water sat. I mean, it kind of is what it is. I'm at the point here where we could go way overboard on this truck, and then it's like, kind of, where do you draw the line? I don't want to put a whole new floor in the bed of this truck. Again, we kind of went over it. We've been through this, you know. We're kind of keeping the truck as original as we can here. And the bed floor is hammered in this thing. It is what it is. The truck is going to have a bed topper on it. I think I've said that a couple times. So I'm not overly concerned about water sitting in the bed of the truck. Plus, it's going to be stored indoors as well moving forward. So it's going to have a pretty cushy life moving forward. But this bed is what it is. I mean, it's going to be a pain in the butt to weld that crossmember in up there. It's really, really, really thin. Like I said, the wire wheel was knocking holes in it. So it is what it is. Let's see what happens when we try and get that crossmember put in. But first thing, I'm gonna blow myself off here with the compressor, and then I'm gonna wire wheel out those flanges where the bed floor and the inner panel meet. I'm gonna cut those out. If I don't, I think I said wire wheel. I'm gonna cut those little flanges out. Then we'll get our braces welded into the crossmember, and I'm hoping today, before I end this video, I can tack that crossmember into place. Even if it's just a couple tacks to hold it in place, I want to see that crossmember in the truck. So I'm gonna get after it. All right, the finished product. We've got this thing all welded up, ready to go back into the truck. We got our flange put on for the header panel. We've got our braces put in for the bed mounts. We put our extensions on. We got all that done today. That's a pretty good amount to get done today. Unfortunately, I just don't have enough time to get this welded up into the bed today. My day is done, and that is going to mark the end of this episode as well. So, we are making progress. This week we got our corners of our bed patched in. We made up some flanges for each side, and then we did all the work on the crossmember, so the rearmost crossmember. The only thing keeping us from reassembling this bed now is those filler panels that need to be patched. And this is unfortunately all just stuff that takes time. It's time consuming to draw out the templates, cut up the panels, fit the panels, get them welded up, get them ground smooth, do all that stuff. It's just time consuming, guys. So I was hoping to be a little further along on this episode. I was hoping to be able to have everything at least tacked back together, but it's gonna have to wait until next week. And next week, finally, I think we will get this truck 100% back together. And when I say 100%, I mean all the pieces in place, not necessarily all welded. But that's okay. Things are coming along really well. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see how much better off we're going to be to have that in place as a structural component versus this. I mean, this is what we're going to replace it with. Look how rusted out, crusty this thing is. You know, so even if this bed doesn't look the part, it will be structurally sound, which is the key here. You know, it doesn't have to look pretty. It just has to be structurally right. And that's what we're shooting for here. So a lot of this work you're not even going to see. It won't be appreciated. That's fine, because I'll know in the end that I have a solid bed. The bed's not gonna, if heaven forbid I was in an accident or a wreck, the bed's not just gonna rip clean off the frame because we had the bolts run through some rusty cross members and all that. So that's why we're doing all this. You know, we're trying to make the truck safe and fun and cool. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Like, there just wasn't a lot of visual progress made, but we did make a ton of progress this week. So thank you guys for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for liking the videos. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. It doesn't take much. You just click the button, you click subscribe, and it's there. I post every Friday, 4 o'clock Central Time. So next Friday, you're gonna see this crossmember go in. You're gonna see me start to patch up those filler panels, and if all goes right, we will finally get those filler panels, the header panel, this crossmember installed back in the truck. That's gonna do it for this week, guys. Remember, If you don't work on your project, it will not work on itself. Get out in the garage, get building, and I'll see you on next week's episode of Cody Builds.